In a sanctuary, a group of cloaked men breaks in, making their way to the library where they bind the guardian with magical restraints. Soon after, their leader, Master Callus, arrives, brandishing 2 axes, and swiftly decapitates the librarian. He then tears a page from a book and prepares to leave. However, the Ancient One, an immensely powerful sorceress who oversees the sanctuary, confronts him at the exit. Although Callus and his followers manage to escape through a portal to the streets of London, they are met with a glass barrier that blocks their path. The Ancient One uses her magic to summon the mirror dimension, manipulating space and time to her advantage. In the chaos, the sword Maris alters gravity, causing everyone to plummet down the sides of the buildings. A battle ensues, with Callus's warriors attempting to entrap the Ancient One, but she effortlessly breaks free. She conjures 2 discs for offense and defense against her outnumbered opponents. Once again, she shifts the dimensions, flipping everything upside down. Despite the odds, Callus clings to the ledge of a building and opens a portal for his followers to escape. Realizing her enemy has fled, the Ancient One dispels the mirror dimension and departs. Meanwhile, in New York City, Dr. Stephen Strange is preparing for surgery. Renowned for his neurosurgery skills, but also his arrogance, he faces a challenging case at the hospital. A patient with a bullet lodged in his head is about to be declared lost, but Strange decides to perform the operation anyway. He successfully removes the bullet, saving the patient. Shortly after, he speaks with his colleague and ex-girlfriend, Dr. Christine, inviting her to a medical conference, which she declines, citing unresolved issues between them. Undeterred, Strange drives at high speed to the conference, but is distracted and crashes, leaving him severely injured. Upon waking up in a hospital bed, he discovers that his hands are damaged, leaving him unable to practice surgery. Desperate to heal, Strange explores various treatments without success. During rehabilitation, he hears about a patient named Pangborn, who miraculously regained movement after being paralyzed. Strange tracks him down at a basketball court, where Pangborn reveals that he visited a mystical place called cumberbatch, where he learned to heal himself through magical arts. With the remaining money he has, Strange travels to Kathmandu, Nepal, in search of cumberbatch. Upon arrival, he finds no one familiar with the location. Just as Strange considers giving up, he is confronted by bandits demanding his watch. Despite his injuries, he attempts to fight back but is overpowered. The man who has been following him intervenes, easily defeating the bandits with impressive combat skills. He introduces himself as Mordo and takes Strange to cumberbatch, where he meets the Ancient One. She reveals her knowledge of his life and assures him that through faith in the mystical arts, he can regain the use of his hands. Angered by this notion, Strange dismisses it as nonsense, but the Ancient One strikes him, separating his spirit from his body. Although he returns, she then guides him through various realities and dimensions within the multiverse. After his return to cumberbatch, Strange realizes the truth and requests to be taught. The Ancient One initially refuses, casting him out, but after much pleading, she changes her mind. The next morning, she begins his training in the mystical arts, which enable practitioners to cast spells using energy from other dimensions. Impressed by the abilities he witnesses, Strange is eager to learn. One night in the library, he meets Wong, the new librarian, who recommends several books. However, Strange is drawn to others that are locked away, which Wong explains can only be understood by a sorcerer supreme. Strange discovers that one page from a particularly powerful book was stolen by Callus, a former apprentice who has turned against the Ancient One. In a cathedral, Callus uses the stolen page to cast a powerful spell, darkening his eyes and amplifying his abilities. A few days later, Strange trains with fellow students to learn how to create portals, but despite his efforts, he struggles to succeed. An elder explains that it requires not just physical ability, but also self-belief and the ability to let energy flow through him. She creates a portal and transports them to Mount Everest, leaving Strange there to learn independently. Despite the frigid conditions, he eventually manages to open a portal back to the sanctuary. Following this experience, his skills in the mystical arts improve significantly. The Ancient One teaches him about the mirror dimension, which can aid in combat without affecting the physical world. The next day, Strange begins combat training. In his first lesson, Mordo discusses magical artifacts known as relics and challenges Strange to summon one. He successfully creates a magical bond, but Mordo counters with a staff attack. Though he manages to defend himself, Mordo defeats him with a well-placed kick. After training, Strange heads to the library but finds it empty. Seizing the moment, he delves into one of the Ancient One's books and learns about the Eye of Agamotto, a powerful artifact housed in the library. Stephen discovers a powerful artifact shaped like a necklace, the Eye of Agamotto. He puts it around his neck and, following the instructions in a book, successfully casts a spell that allows him to manipulate time. Using this newfound magic, he retrieves the page that Callus stole, revealing information about Dormammu, a demon of immense power. Just then, Mordo and Wong arrive, admonishing him for tampering with time. Despite acknowledging his error, Stephen presses for information about Dormammu and his connection to the Ancient One. Wong explains that ancient sorcerers created 3 sanctums in Hong Kong, New York, and London, forming a mystical barrier to protect Earth. The sorcerers guard these sanctums to keep Dormammu and his dark dimension at bay. Stephen is taken aback by this revelation when suddenly, a portal to the London sanctum opens, and its guardian is ambushed by Callus. In the chaos, Callus uses a spell to blow up the sanctum, causing Stephen to be propelled through a portal to New York. Regaining his composure, Stephen searches for an exit and discovers a room filled with relics, including a flying cloak displayed in a case. Suddenly, he hears a commotion from the main hall and finds the master of the sanctum battling Callus and his minions. Though the master defends himself valiantly, he loses a leg, and Callus soon conjures a blade to attack him. Stephen realizes he must fight, as Callus's minions advance on him. He summons a magical whip and uses it to fend off his attackers, striking them with objects around him. Callus throws his blade at Stephen, who manages to deflect it with his whip. Fleeing down a corridor, Stephen finds himself trapped as Callus manipulates space against him. He creates magical shields to block attacks, but Callus and his minions are skilled and agile, making it difficult for Stephen to counter. Determined, he summons his whip again and hits one of the warriors, but Callus spins the corridor, disorienting him, and then flips the space upside down. Holding on, Stephen spots 3 portals at the corridor's end. He jumps up and pushes one of the warriors through a portal that leads to a desert. He attempts to seal the passage but is hit by another warrior. They exchange blows until Stephen, in a moment of focus, closes the portal, sending his opponent through another one. Now facing only Callus, who prepares for battle by conjuring 2 blades, Stephen realizes he has no chance in direct combat and retreats to the relic room. There, Callus attacks with his blades, but Stephen uses his whip to disarm him. Callus, more skilled, leans against a pillar and delivers a spinning kick, sending Stephen crashing into the sanctum's windows. As he prepares to deliver the final blow, he is unexpectedly halted by the levitating cloak, which saves Stephen from a fatal blow. The fight continues, and Stephen uses his whip to snatch Callus's blade, but they clash again. Callus lunges for 2 axes on the wall, but the cloak intervenes, guiding Stephen toward an unusual suit of armor. Seizing it, Stephen hurls it at Callus, pinning him down. With the battle seemingly over, Stephen is curious about Callus's plans. Callus reveals that he aims to surrender the world to Dormammu, believing that with Dormammu's energy, time itself could not destroy the planet or its inhabitants. He also exposes the Ancient One's secret of using energy from the dark dimension to prolong her life. This revelation leaves Stephen bewildered, and he becomes vulnerable to an attack from one of Callus's followers, who strikes him in the heart with a blade. Severely wounded, Stephen attempts to escape, but the warrior pursues him, ready to finish the job. Luckily, the levitating cloak intervenes again, allowing Stephen to create a portal to the hospital. At the hospital, he finds Dr. Christine and asks her to treat his wound. As she prepares to inject him to revive him, Stephen loses consciousness and unexpectedly manifests his spirit in the astral dimension. Taking advantage of his out-of-body state, he helps guide Christine's hand to administer the injection correctly. Meanwhile, the warrior is still battling the cloak but manages to free himself and follows Stephen through the portal. Upon arriving at the hospital, he encounters Stephen's spirit and a fierce battle resumes. In their astral forms, they float and walk through walls while exchanging punches and kicks. Despite Stephen's best efforts, his enemy lands a spinning kick that causes his heart to stop. In a moment of urgency, Dr. Christine uses a defibrillator, which surprisingly sends a shock of energy from Stephen's spirit, pushing the villain away. Stephen urges her to increase the voltage, and she complies, resulting in a massive surge of energy that destroys his enemy's soul. After the confrontation, Dr. Christine treats Stephen's physical wounds, but he knows he must return to stop Callus's plans. He goes back through the portal, donning the now familiar levitation cloak, which has become part of him. He searches for Callus, only to discover that the villain has escaped. Moments later, Mordo and the Ancient One appear, and Stephen recounts everything that has transpired. The Ancient One then offers him the New York Sanctum for protection, but he declines, not wanting to be forced into a position where he must eliminate others. He also reveals that he knows about her use of dark dimension energy to extend her life. Offended by Stephen's rejection, the Ancient One concludes the discussion and returns to the Sanctum to summon reinforcements. Meanwhile, Mordo confronts Stephen about his decision not to accept the position of protector for the Sanctum, insisting that he is now part of something larger. However, before their argument can escalate, Callus and his followers return to the Sanctum, preparing to cast the same spell that destroyed the London Sanctum. The Ancient One intervenes, attacking them in an attempt to halt their plans, but Callus successfully completes the spell, aiming to obliterate the entire sanctuary. In a moment of desperation, Stephen invokes the mirror dimension to protect the Sanctum, but this proves to be a grave mistake. In this dimension, Callus becomes even more powerful, easily manipulating the environment. Stephen manages to steal Callus's access ring to prevent him from escaping through portals. He and Mordo rush into the streets, only to find that the entire city has been transformed into an infinite puzzle due to Callus's magic. As they navigate the distorted landscape, Stephen creates a portal to escape, but Callus twists the dimension, causing them to fall onto a bus. Their enemies pursue them relentlessly, prompting the heroes to fly into a building and jump through windows. Stephen attempts to create another escape portal, but Callus jumps in after them, generating a shockwave that shatters the windows and disrupts the portal. To make matters worse, Callus casts a spell that causes the entire building to sink, scattering the city into separate blocks and creating a vast chasm. With the help of their levitation cloaks and boots, Stephen and Mordo manage to descend a fire escape. However, the world around them becomes increasingly chaotic, thanks to Callus's magic. In the midst of their escape, Mordo and Stephen get separated. As Callus prepares for a final strike, a section of the floor shifts to reveal the Ancient One. She creates a battle arena to confront him, attempting to persuade him against using Dormammu's energy, but he dismisses her. The Ancient One counters the warriors with her energy discs, but is distracted when Callus pierces one of his minions, injuring her. He then kicks her through a portal. Mordo and Stephen follow her, but she crashes into a building ledge and falls unconscious. Stephen rushes her to Dr. Christine's hospital, pleading for her life. In the operating room, her heartbeat flatlines, revealing that she has separated her spirit from her body. He follows her into the astral dimension, warning her to return soon or she will die. However, she tells him her time is up, and that he and Mordo must stop Dormammu. Unable to resist her injuries, the Ancient One dies. Devastated, Stephen bids farewell to Dr. Christine and heads to the Hong Kong Sanctum, the last line of defense against Dormammu. There, he finds Mordo, who is grappling with the revelation that the Ancient One used Dormammu's energy. Stephen convinces him that they must unite against Callus, and they open a portal to Hong Kong. Upon arrival, they find the Sanctum destroyed and Dormammu poised to take over. Callus prepares to attack, but Stephen uses the Eye of Agamotto to cast a time control spell, reversing time and reconstructing the city. While others suffer the effects of the time reversal, Stephen frees Mordo from the spell, and they head toward the Sanctum. Callus breaks free and confronts Stephen, who uses the environment to defend himself. Meanwhile, Mordo battles one of Callus's followers, using the reconstruction of a building to gain the high ground and trapping her inside. As Stephen and Callus clash, Mordo aids him, pushing Callus into a wall that reassembles, trapping him. The time-reversing spell continues, allowing Stephen to see Wong's lifeless body, but the restoration undoes this event, and Stephen frees Wong from the spell. They rush to save the Sanctum, but Callus breaks free, unleashing the wave of energy that hits Stephen, freezing time. Realizing he must end this conflict, Stephen enters the dark dimension to confront Dormammu. Upon arrival, he casts a spell on his arm and stands before the powerful entity. He declares he has come to bargain, but Dormammu shows no interest and hurls rocks at him. Stephen conjures protective discs, but Dormammu retaliates with a blast that disintegrates him. Moments later, Stephen reappears, confusing Dormammu, who is taken aback when Stephen reveals the time loop spell. Enraged, Dormammu attacks, but Stephen returns each time. Eventually, Dormammu agrees to the bargain, to remove his followers and leave Earth in peace, ending the time loop. Dormammu complies, withdrawing his minions and saving the planet just as Callus is about to strike. Afterward, Stephen rewinds time again, restoring Hong Kong and the Sanctum. While things seem resolved, Mordo chooses to leave, unable to accept that the Ancient One, Callus, and Stephen broke the natural order. Back at the sanctuary, Stephen guards the Eye of Agamotto, which Wong advises him to keep safe as it is an infinity stone. They then travel to the New York Sanctum, where Stephen accepts his role as Earth's protective sorcerer. Later, Thor visits, and they discuss Odin's disappearance. Stephen promises to help him find his father. Meanwhile, a hooded figure meets with Pangborn, who had informed Stephen about cumberbatch. The figure reveals himself as Mordo, accusing Pangborn of manipulating nature through magic. Despite Pangborn's defense, Mordo attacks, draining the magic that healed him and leaving him unable to walk. Mordo concludes that the world's problems stem from too many sorcerers and they must be eliminated. Like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.